Football's golden oldies from the Lofthouse in Lancaster. A cold, grey February day in Bolton, 1933. It's a cold, grey February day in Bolton, the year 1933. A small boy scampers down Manchester Road, leaping over the puddles as he goes. Above him tower the stands of Burnham Park, home of Bolton Wanderers Football Club. Today they are at home to Manchester City in the 5th round of the FA Cup, a fixture that has attracted 70,000 people into the famous ground. The boy should be at school, but like many others, he has played truant to come and watch his idols. Luckily, a policeman indulgently looks the other way as the boy shins up a drain pipe at the back of the ground. From his perch high above the terraces, the boy watches, entranced. One day he dreams, I will play here. I will wear the white shirt of the Wanderers. Nat Lofthouse's lifelong love affair with his hometown club had begun. The Lion of Vienna, 80 years a legend. This is the story of a legend, Nathaniel Lofthouse, affectionately known as Nat, Lofty, the Lion of Vienna, and even the Hammer of the Scots. Nat relives his love affair with football, and especially Bolton Wanderers, his hometown club. He recalls his role in two of Wembley's most emotional FA Cup finals, the Matthews final of 1953 and Bolton's win over the Manchester United side after the Munich disaster. I first met Nat Lofthouse when he was just 17. Needless to say, he was wearing the white shirt of Bolton Wanderers. I was stationed down south at Tidworth, and when I came home I tried to fix myself up with a game in Lancashire. But as Deepdale was being used as a prisoner of war camp, that's how I came to be playing alongside Nat for Bolton against Burnley. Nat scored twice, and it was obvious even then that he was going to be an outstanding player. That was Tom Finney, who went on to say this. In the England team, he was a great colleague, the kind of man you always wanted to have on your side. Nat would never hide. If you were in trouble, you'd always look for him, and he would be there to help you out. No wonder they christened him the Lion of Vienna. No more lion-hearted player ever wore an England shirt. Despite all the acclaim, Nat has never changed. He's still the level-headed, down-to-earth Lancastrian I first met all those years ago. He says what he thinks. You always know exactly where you stand with him, and I am very proud to be his friend. The Happy Wanderer. All he ever wanted to do was play football. He was hopeless at school. If he finished 3 from the bottom of the class, he thought he was doing well. It was football first and last, the story of his life. His first proper game, he played in goal, losing 7-1. It wasn't the only hiding he got that day, because his mother had just bought him a pair of new shoes. You can imagine the reception he got when he arrived home. His grandmother came to the rescue with another pair of shoes, and his games master did likewise when he picked Nathaniel at centre forward from then on. That was at Brandwood Street School, Bolton, back in 1930, when he was 5 years old. After primary school, he went to Castle Hill School at the age of 10. Tommy Lawton went to the same school. Nat was chosen for Bolton schools against Bury schools, and he scored 7 goals. He remembers one Saturday meeting the great Tommy Lawton at the bus stop. Tommy told him, "Nat, no matter how you play, always try to score. That's the important thing." Then Lawton signed his autograph book. Nat never forgot Tommy. The Mayor of Bolton, Councillor Jim Entwistle, came to Castle Hill to to present the prizes. He was a director at Bolton and asked Nat if he would like to play for Wanderers. So at the age of 14, Nat signed for Wanderers. The date, September 4th, 1939, the day after the outbreak of World War II. Nat went down the pit as one of the Bevan boys at Mossley Colliery. He remembers going down the pit at 5 o'clock in the morning, coming up at 11 o'clock and setting off to play football at somewhere like Tranmere. Good advice is essential. Since making his debut in March 1941, Nat had played 139 games and scored 100 goals. In 1939, he signed for Wanderers at 14. 7 years later, and a world war later, he was a regular. There was no way he would have played 100 games between 1941 and 1946. He would have been climbing the ladder in the juniors, then the reserves. Instead, he learned his trade in the senior side. One of the best things they did at Burton Park was make George Taylor a coach when he retired. He had a good relationship with manager Bill Ridding. In those days, most clubs had a secretary manager. That was Bill, which left George to coach. He was the coach in both the 53 and 58 cup finals. An example of this, England against Yugoslavia at Highbury, 2-2, with Nat scoring both goals. Then it was Chelsea at home. Nat had a stinker, a real shocker. He could do nothing right. As he came off the field at the end, George was stood by the dressing room door where he said, "Right, Lofty, I'll see you in my office on Monday morning, 8:30 sharp." Nat replied, "Nay, George, Monday's our day off." "Not for you it isn't. My office, 8:30 sharp." Monday morning, Nat had the biggest rollicking he'd ever had. On Saturday afternoon, you were trying to do something you were not capable of, play football. You were coming back deep for the ball, trying to trap it. You couldn't trap a bag of wet cement. You can do 3 things: run, shoot and head. That's what you did for England. Why didn't you do this for us on Saturday? We've got plenty of players who can turn on the fancy stuff, so leave that to them and concentrate on what you're good at. Nat said it was the best piece of advice I ever received. Nat's working day. Here's an example of Nat's working day. Catch a bus to the ground, arriving at 10 o'clock, then training. We always training on the pitch. 30 minutes running around the track, then 30 minutes ball work. No, not a football, but a heavy old medicine ball. Playing throw and catch, then body exercises. Finally, they throw us a ball and say get on with some 5-a-sides. But the players were usually too knackered to do very much by then. The game is still the same. When people ask Nat how he would get on today, he would say Finney, Matthews and Lawton would still be great players today. Perhaps the improved training techniques today would make them even better players than we remember them. When Nat signed on the ground staff, he was paid £3 a week. After the war, he was paid £10 a week in the summer and £12 a week in the season. With a £2 win bonus, the money went up over the years. £10, then £12, then £14. And in his last 12 months, Nat was on the princely sum of £17 a week. Lofthouse never worried. He was proud to play for Bolton Wanderers. The club was proud of its reputation as a family club. Most of the 1958 Wembley side had been with the club for 12 years or more. That's maybe why the team spirit was so high. The road to Wembley. Bolton Wanderers started along the road to Wembley with a home tie against Fulham. 2-2 the previous years. No real problems. Bolton won 3-1. It was a different story in the fourth round against second division Notts County. Well, Bolton 1-1 at Burnden Park. The replay at Meadow Lane ended level at 2-2. The next replay saw Wanderers win 1-0 to earn themselves a trip to Luton Town, another second division side. They won 1-0 again. The quarter-final took Wanderers to Gateshead, another 1-0 win. Took them into the last four, where they met Everton, who were having a spell in the second division, and the main road semi-final must go down as one of the most remarkable cup battles of them all. Bolton were 4-0 up at half-time. Nat scored 2, but in the second half, Everton hit Bolton with everything but the kitchen sink, as Bolton scraped through 4-3. These thrilling games have been taken away from us now by the rule makers. Before the celebrations even started, Wanderers knew their Wembley opponents, Blackpool. And Stanley Matthews, Blackpool had been to Wembley twice before, losing to Manchester United in 1948 and Newcastle United in 1950. Everyone thought it would be Stanley's last chance to win a cup winner's medal. They thought his career was nearly over. It shows how long the experts can be. 1953 was a sentimental year. Queen Elizabeth II was crowned. Britain conquered Mount Everest. Gordon Richards won his only derby. Great things were happening to great people. Everybody outside Bolton wanted Blackpool to win the FA Cup. A cup of tears. Every club has its rituals before big games, and Bolton were no exception. It involved the cup drink. It meant mixing 2 dozen eggs in 2 bottles of sherry. Stir well and drink it down. They had done this before every game. They would drink it after training. They had a couple of days at the seaside, Blackpool of all places, getting clean sea air into their lungs. And they visited Jackson's the tailors, who provided suits, shirts and ties. Tickets were like gold dust. Over 50,000 fans used to stand on the terraces at Burnden Park, and they all wanted a ticket. Wanderers left for their big match headquarters in Reading on the Thursday. For Lofthouse there was an extra honour. He was voted Footballer of the Year by the FWA. He scored 22 goals in 36 games, played 8 times for England, scoring 8 goals. Here's how the 2 sides lined up. Bolton, Hanson, Bowles, Banks, Wheeler, Barras, Bell, Holden, Moyer, Lofthouse, Hassel and Langton. Blackpool, Farm, Chimwell, Garrett, Fenton, Johnson, Robinson, Matthews, Taylor, Monson, Moody and Perry. For 66 minutes of a great Wembley occasion, Nat had no reason to believe his dream of winning the Cup Winners' Medal was going to come true. Only 2 minutes had gone when Nat scored. What a start. It settled Bolton down perfectly. Wonderful match that everybody remembers. After 18 minutes left half, Eric Bell went down with a hamstring injury. He was crippled. He went on to the left wing. Bobby Langton switched to inside half and Hassel went to left half. 15 minutes later, Blackpool were level when Stan Mortensen equalised. After 38 minutes, Moyer scored, and at half-time the team walked towards the Wembley tunnel where a voice called out, "Congratulations, Lofty!" It was Mortensen. "What for? We haven't won yet," said Nat. Morty replied, "I know you haven't, but didn't you realise you scored in every round?" A great gesture from a great player. 5 minutes, Bolton had one hand on the trophy. If only. Lofthouse watches in despair as his second half shot hits the post. That would have put Bolton 4-1 up, and even Stan Matthews would have stood up to pull that back. Two great football players, scoring every round. Three men thought otherwise: Morty, Ernie Taylor and Matthews. 66 minutes, Bolton leading 3-1. Despite having one of their key men, Eric Bell, a passenger on the left wing, Taylor fed Matthews to his feet. He was the fastest man in football from a standing start over 10 yards. This time he took on the defence, crossed, and there was Morty to head it into the net. 3-2. Bolton clung on, but the tide had turned. Wanderers knew it. Blackpool knew it. 2 minutes to go. A free kick on the edge of the box. Up stepped Morty to smack it into the back of the net. His hat-trick. The first player to score 3 in the Wembley Cup final. The team everyone had given up for dead had risen like a phoenix from the ashes. Bolton held out until 20 seconds from the end. Matthews got it again. Sent over one of those inch-perfect crosses, and there was Bill Perry to score the winner. So the incredible Matthews final was over. It was Blackpool's Harry Johnson, not Bolton's Willie Moyer, who hosted the famous trophy aloft. Stanley, the oldest man on the field at 38, had his medal, and Wanderers had their mitre. Nat said first, Stanley Mortensen, no one who scores a hat-trick in a cup final should ever be forgotten. Like me, he scored in every round that year. Nat Lofthouse talks about the Babes. Roger Byrne was captain of the Busby Babes, yet he was a young man himself, a classic player with a great football brain. He would have gone on to become one of England's great captains. Then there was Duncan Edwards. What a man, what a player, so full of life, so full of fun. He would play anywhere, anytime. He could play outside left or right back. At 18, he was already a grown man, a player at the height of his powers. Duncan scored the finest goal I've ever seen. West Germany versus England in the Olympic Stadium, Berlin, 1956. Duncan called for a throw out from keeper Reg Matthews on the left of the box. He beat one man, advanced to the halfway line, beat another, then he beat 3 more inside the German half, and from 30 yards hit a left footer that went into the net like a rocket. There was some party that night. England had won 3-1 against the 1954 World Cup winners, and Duncan led the celebration. He was that kind of man. He lived life to the full, but for the Munich crash, England would have had the finest side in their history. Byrne, Taylor, Duncan, who were already in the team then, Eddie Coleman, David Pegg, Mark Jones, Dennis Filer, and of course, Bobby Charlton to cover. In late January 1958, they beat us 7-2 at Old Trafford. Beat us? No. They annihilated us. Anyway, I was sitting in the United dressing room with them afterwards, drinking bottles of Double Diamond straight out of the bottle. They were all there: Big Dunk, Tommy Taylor, Mark Jones, David Pegg, Eddie Coleman and Roger Byrne. 16 days later, they were dead. The word great is used too lightly these days. You watch television to see a great pass, read in the paper about a great game, switch on the radio and hear about a great goal. Go to Wembley again. Wanderers only had two men who played in the '53 Cup final, Captain Nat Lofthouse and Doug Holden. The whole team had been signed on for the basic £10 fee. They were called the £110 team. The third round draw, Preston North End at Deanville, finished still at the height of his powers, but 2 goals from Ray Parry and another from Dennis Stevens saw them through to the 4th round, where York City waited. Bolton drew 0-0 at Bootham Crescent, but won the replay 2-0 and prepared to face Stoke City in the 5th round. A hard game, but a 3-1 win brought another hard tie. Wolves at home, who were along with Manchester United the outstanding teams of the 1950s. In front of a packed Burnham Park crowd, Wanderers won 2-1, so off the main road for the semi-final, where they met another Lancashire side in Blackburn Rovers. Lofthouse had broken his shoulder at Tottenham 4 weeks earlier. Ralph Gubbins took his place and scored both goals in a 2-0 victory. The 1958 Cup final will not be remembered as a great final. It will be remembered for the emotion. The team that died at Munich had risen from the ashes. The nation waited for a happy ending. Wembley line-up: Bolton, Hopkinson, Hartle and Banks, Henning, Higgins, Edwards, Birch, Stevens, Lofthouse, Parry, Holden. Manchester United: Gregg, Fawkes, Greaves, Goodwin, Cope, Crowther, Dawson, Taylor, Charlton, Violet and Webster. Cup final day was special. The photo shows Bill Ridding and Jimmy Murphy leading out Bolton Wanderers and Manchester United before the game. Within a few minutes, Nat scored. A perfect stand. Wanderers were the better team throughout. It was a miracle that United even got a team together, let alone reach the cup final. The only moments doubt Nat had was when Bobby Charlton unleashed one of his 25-yarders that hit a post. Nat's second goal decided the match and sparked a soccer row that still lives today. Dennis Stevens fired in a shot from the left-hand side of the box that Harry Gregg stopped but couldn't hold. Nat was following it in at top speed. Gregg turned to catch the ball again, and then Nat hit him, the ball, the lot, into the back of the net. Today Nat would have been possibly sent off, but in those days you could challenge the keeper. People often ask Nat if Harry speaks to him. Of course, they were speaking to one another after the game, sharing a drink. In fact, Harry was a guest at Nat's testimonial dinner. The finest sportsman. The first photo is Bolton Wanderers 1958 Cup Final squad, and the far photo is Nat and Harry meeting in 1989, the best of friends. Prince Philip presented the FA Cup to Nat, a party in the dressing room followed, then a knock on the door. In walked Matt Busby with a stick and Jimmy Murphy at his side, lending a hand. In complete silence, Matt walked round the dressing room, shaking every player by the hand. Tommy Banks summed it up: "That's the finest sportsman you'll ever see." England, my England. Thanks to football, Nat saw the world, met many wonderful people. Pulling on that white shirt meant a lot to players. The first hint that he might be on the road to an England cap came in 1949, when he was named for an FA 11 against the RAF at Stoke. They lost 7-5, but Nat scored 4, 3 of them from crosses by Stanley Matthews. The next step on the ladder was the Football League side. Nat played against the Irish League at Wolverhampton in February 1950. He played 13 games for the league, scoring 21 goals, including a record goal of 6 against the Irish League at Wolverhampton in 1952. Nat's big break came in 1950 when he was chosen for the FA Tour of Canada. The main England team was playing in the World Cup in Brazil. Other players in Canada were Jimmy Hagan, Jackie Sewell, Johnny Hancock, Stan Hansen and Stanley Matthews, who remarkably was not in the World Cup squad in Brazil. Nat's book said the World Cup was in Uruguay, a simple error. The team sailed on the Empress of Canada, trained on board, and over the next 8 weeks played 14 matches. One of the highlights for Nat was the day he played against England. The local team were 2 men short, so Nat and Tim Ward volunteered to play for them. Lofty kicked off 20 times that day. They lost 19-1, and what's more, he didn't score the one. What did Nat think of Walter Winterbottom? He would study the opposition in great detail. Here's a typical example in that educated voice of his. Nat, this chap is 13 stone and 6 foot 1 inch, strong on his right foot, weak on the left, and he's not too good upstairs. Then he would turn to Finney and Matthews. So Tom, Stanley, can you get those balls in the air for Nat? Please, good show. Nat had a lot of respect for Billy Wright, a true leader, but he always fancied playing against him, as he could outrun and outjump him. But there were 3 in particular who always gave him a hard time: Stan Cullis of Wolves, Neil Franklin of Stoke, and Dave Ewing of Manchester City. Another man who got the acclaim he deserved was Alf Ramsey. Nat said he was a cool customer on the field. Here's what I mean. Austria were leading 1-0 at Wembley in 1952 when we were awarded a penalty. He always had the lace facing the keeper, but the ball refused to stay on the spot. It seemed like an age before he got the ball how he wanted it. Alf was totally unruffled and calmly stroked the ball past Zeman for the equaliser. Alf didn't just have his own game in order, he could put everyone else right too. He was such a brainy player. He would take me aside at half time and say, "Delay your run a bit and I'll be able to put the ball exactly where you want it." He did too. It was no surprise at all to me when he became such a successful manager. In 1966, Alf didn't think we might win. He didn't hope we would win it. He knew we would and said so. He was right. What Nat thought about Tom Finney. I played 22 games for England when Tom Finney was on the left wing. I scored 22 goals. Coincidence? No way. As soon as I knew I was in the side, I looked to see if Tom's name was there too. I once remember reading an England match report that Nat Lofthouse started another England attack by passing to Tom Finney. Every time I got the ball, I passed it to Tom Finney. He knew my strengths, my weaknesses. He knew where I liked the ball. He knew I could run, shoot and head, and not much more. And I knew he would put the ball exactly where I wanted it. Tom was a complete team man. He could play in 4 different positions for England. Tom had no weaknesses at all. He was a great player on the field and a great man off it. I remember going to a testimonial match in Grimsby with Tom. He picked me up at Burnham Park at noon. We got back at 3 o'clock the next morning. That didn't worry Tom. Our wives were good friends and we saw a lot of one another on and off the field. I owe him a lot. It's hard to believe that Tom wasn't an automatic choice for England, but there were a lot of good wingers around like Bobby Langton of Bolton Wanderers, Jimmy Mullen and Johnny Hancock of Wolves, medley of Tottenham Hotspur, Jackie Milburn at Newcastle United, and of course Stanley Matthews at Blackburn. What Nat thought of Stanley Matthews? There was only one Stanley Matthews. We'll never see anyone like him again. Unique. Stanley knew exactly what he wanted. He had his own ideals. He didn't train with the rest of the side because he knew how he must train to suit his own game. You would see him out there doing short sprints, one after the other. He was careful what he ate. He never drank or smoked. He looked after his health. He was precise in everything. They threw the mould away when they made him. He would tell me before the match, "Don't come out to my wing, Nat. You'll only bring a defender with you. Leave me to get to the byline and then I'll cross the ball. Lace away so it won't hurt when you head it." He always tried to build you up. Stanley didn't like three things: swearing, smoking, and the ball 3 yards either side of him. He wanted the ball at his feet every time, and funnily enough, I don't recall ever seeing him head a ball. I think he got more pleasure making a goal than scoring one. It was uncanny. Stanley's crosses were never to the near post, never to the far post, always on the spent penalty spot or just a few yards in towards the goal, enough to have the keeper in 2 lines. I had to judge how far Stan had to go to get to the byline, to anticipate when he would cross the ball. Then I started my run. 9 times out of 10 the ball would be on the penalty spot. Yes, he had his own lifestyle, played the game his way, but he was the best. And a great guy too. Fantastic. Other players beside Finney and Matthews. There were plenty of other fine players like Jimmy Dickinson, who played 800 games for Portsmouth. Those figures speak volumes. Never had a bad game. Nat Lofthouse always placed great store on players like that. Men you can always rely on. Anchorman. Jimmy was never brilliant. He never hit the headlines, but he was always there. What about little Bill Eckersley? He could stand under a table. But what a fullback. There were 3 world-class goalkeepers to choose from. Bert Williams of Wolverhampton Wanderers, Sam Bartram of Charlton Athletic, and Ted Ditchburn of Tottenham Hotspur. If any one of those had a bad game, he knew what would happen next time out. There wouldn't be a next time. In 33 games for England, Nat Lofthouse scored 30 goals and finished on the losing side just 4 times. He was proud of that record, but he always gave credit to the men who played alongside him, the men he depended on, the men he respected. Hillsborough. April 16, 1989 should have been one of the happiest days of Nat's 50 years in football. He was to be guest of honour at the annual dinner of the Professional Football Association at the Hilton Hotel in London. It's always a special night. Nat was to receive a special merit award in recognition of his service to both Wanderers and his 50 years in the game. But the 1989 dinner was no night of celebration. There were tears, not cheers. The previous day, nearly 100 people had been crushed to death at the FA Cup semi-final between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest at Hillsborough. It was the blackest day in the history of a national game. We thought it could never happen again after the 1946 disaster at Burnham Park, in which 33 people lost their lives. We thought our stadiums would be made safer places, but no. There followed the Ibrox disaster in 1971, the Bradford City fire in 1985, then soon afterwards that terrible night at Heysel Stadium in Brussels, when fans went on the rampage before the Liverpool Juventus European Cup final. The scenes at Hillsborough brought back horrific memories from that of the Burnham Park disaster on March 9th, 1946. And there were so many similarities between those two awful days, separated by 43 years. Nobody knew what happened. Burnham Park was the scene of an important FA Cup game. It was the sixth round Bolton Wanderers against Stoke City, who included the world's most famous footballer, Stanley Matthews. Nat had never seen the ground so full, no space at all. Over 65,000 people had paid to get in. Later it was estimated that 20,000 had got in without paying. When the game kicked off, police and ambulance men were lifting fans out of the crowd, and there were people lying outside the touchline at the embankment end. Nat thought they had fainted. After about 15 minutes, a police inspector ran onto the pitch and told the referee that he had to stop the game. The players went off. Stretcher cases were brought through the dressing rooms while the players waited to restart. But none of the 22 players knew the extent of the disaster, nor did any of the fans. After a break of about 20 minutes, the police chief asked the referee to restart the game. Communications were not so sophisticated in those days. It would not have been easy to let all those people know what had happened and why the game was being stopped. The police chief was worried about getting all the fans away if the game was abandoned, without them knowing really what had happened. After all, if the players on the pitch didn't know the full horror of the situation, how could fans 100 yards away be expected to know? Tragedy. The match ended in a goalless draw. It wasn't until afterwards that it was learned people had been killed. The papers the next day reported the enormity of the tragedy. 33 people had died as crushed barriers collapsed under the sheer weight of numbers. Another 24 were in hospital. Over 500 had been treated on the ground. Nat went back to the ground on Sunday morning and said, "It was a pitiful sight. There were shoes, ties, gloves, hats and other bits of clothing on the running track around the ground. We all felt helpless. There was a suggestion afterwards that the father and his small son, frightened by the size of the crowd, had forced open an exit gate and escaped from the crush." The photo shows dead people on the side of the pitch. The tragic scene. Nat attended the inquest. There was a memorial service. The Mayor of Bolton launched an appeal which raised over £40,000 for the families of the dead. The Home Secretary, Chester Eade, announced an immediate inquiry to be chaired by a King's Council. It concluded that there had been no structural failure. The tragedy had been caused by sheer weight of numbers. Alterations were made to the embankment terracing at the cost of £5,500, and the inquiry called for all sports arenas to be inspected regularly for safety checks. The town of Bolton was in a state of shock. It was less than a year since the end of the Second World War. Nat said, all those years ago, when I played against Spain at the Bernabeu Stadium in Madrid, they had 140,000 capacity, all-seater stadium with ample car parking. There were restaurants, swimming pools. It was a place the family could go for the day, not just for a football match. If the Spaniards could do that in the early 1950s, surely we can do it now. There has been talk for some time of building a new stadium in the Birmingham area. There has been talk of converting colossal stadium in Bradford into a luxury ground, but that is all there has been. Talk, talk and more talk. The Lion of Vienna. Nat always felt 10 feet tall when he heard the national anthem before a big game overseas. He won 14 of his 33 caps abroad, and that feeling never changed. When the anthem was played, it would be shoulders back, chest out, and try to look a couple of inches taller. Still eyeball to eyeball stuff. It was just like that on May 25th, 1952. A day that will go down as Nat's finest hour in an England shirt, the day he was dubbed the Lion of Vienna. The match was billed as the unofficial championship of Europe, and waiting to cheer on the team were 30,000 soldiers who were based on the Rhine. There was a lot of pride at stake. Nat gave England the lead in the first half from a Jackie Sewell pass. It was never going to be easy, and England were clinging on at 2-2 with 15 minutes to go. Austria were desperate to win. When they won a corner, almost everyone went up for it. Nat was left up front with one defender marking it. Merritt caught the corner, spotted Tom Finney, unmarked outside the box, and threw the ball to him. Nat set off. Tom's through pass left Austria's solitary defender standing. Nat was in the clear, with only the keeper, Musil, to beat. He started to come out, then he stopped, then he went back, hesitated, and finally came dashing out. Nat had to wait until Musil was totally committed. When he was, Nat hit the ball. Musil crashed into him, and they collapsed in a heap. "Bloody hell, Lofty, it's in," shouted Eddie Bailey as Nat was carried off on a stretcher. After treatment from Jimmy Trotter, Nat went back on the field, hit a post. At the final whistle, hundreds of soldiers ran onto the pitch and cheered the players off. It was a famous victory. Celebrations after the game. The next day, he was hailed as the Lion of Vienna. A pain in Spain. Nat went along to a soccer evening with Tom Finney in the Lancashire town of Newtonley-Willers. It was given by the Earlstown Football Club Supporters Association. Highlight of the evening was a lecture by Tom Finney. Halfway through the evening, proceedings were halted by a special presentation to Nat, who knew nothing about it. It was a trophy, a lion mounted on a plinth. For these local soccer fans, commemorated Nat's glorious day in Vienna. He was very proud and very humble to receive that trophy, and it remains one of his most treasured possessions. Nat has played in some hard games in his time, but there was never anything to match England's game against Spain in the Bernabeu Stadium on May 18, 1955. There were times in that game when he wondered if they'd got the match mixed up with the tussle in the nearby Bullring. England were kicked all over the field, and they singled out Stanley Matthews for special treatment. Their left back didn't make one genuine attempt to go for the ball. It was a wonder Stan didn't break both his legs. Every time he moved, the left back kicked him. He got to his feet wearily after treatment from the magic sponge. Roy Bentley, who was exasperated, said, "Stan, bloody well kick him back." Of course he didn't, and Bentley had the consolation of getting the goal in the hardest earned draw Nat ever played in. South America is a difficult place to play. In 1953, England went on a 3-match tour of South America. Games against Argentina in Buenos Aires, Chile in Santiago, and world champions Uruguay in Montevideo. The tour was an eye-opener for Nat. In Montevideo, one of their players ran 20 yards bouncing the ball on his foot. Whether he would have got away with that against Tommy Banks or Roy Hartle, Nat wasn't prepared to say. The first game against Argentina, the pitch was rock hard, baked solid after 5 weeks without rain. Nat said, "We could do with a drop of rain before kick-off, lads." Well, he got his wish. An hour before kick-off, the heavens opened, and when the players walked out onto the pitch, it was like one of the Great Lakes. Players were slithering and sliding all over the place. Football was impossible. English referee Arthur Ellis gave it about 20 minutes before calling it a day. Nobody had any complaints, as England went to Chile without being beat. They won the game against Chile 2-1, thanks to goals from Nat Lofthouse and Tommy Taylor of Man United. And so on to Uruguay, where they lost 2-1. They weren't unlucky. Uruguay was simply the better side. So fast, so smooth, so skillful. They were leading 2-0 when Tommy Taylor scored for England, but Uruguay gave the impression that they had an extra gear. Put simply, Uruguay were better than England, and that said, the scoreline flattered us. We needed to learn and do better next time. The World Cup 1954. The next time came sooner than that expected. England travelled to Switzerland and were drawn with Switzerland, Italy and Belgium. In those days you only played 2 of the teams in your group. The first game against Belgium produced 8 goals, 4-4, with Lofthouse scoring 2. Nat missed the game against Switzerland, but goals from Dennis Wilshaw and Jimmy Mullen gave England a 2-0 win. Waiting for England in the quarter-finals were the Uruguayans, who had shown they meant to retain their crown by blitzing their way into the quarter-finals with some superb displays, including a 7-0 win over Scotland. England weren't overawed, but they didn't do themselves justice, losing 4-2 with goals from Tom Finney and Nat Lofthouse. Maybe the Scots wouldn't have thanked England for watching their 7-0 defeat by Uruguay. It was a special atmosphere in Switzerland 1954. The Italian team was staying in the same hotel as England, and one evening Nat bumped into the centre half, Ferrario of Juventus. He always gave Nat a really hard time, especially on that hot, humid day in Florence 2 years earlier. But he found an interpreter, and he sat with Nat and they chatted for over an hour. And not just football either, wives, kids, homes, that kind of thing. The difficult day in Florence was just a memory, water under the bridge. Flower of Scotland. Certain grounds are part of a player's education, places where it means something to have played. A Wembley Cup final, the World Cup, and maybe an Englishman can never call himself an international player until he's played against Scotland at Hampden Park and at Wembley. These games have a unique atmosphere. Nat played against Scotland 4 times, twice at Hampden, twice at Wembley, never finishing on the losing side, winning 2 and drawing 2. They were all special. If Nat had to pick out one, it would be the 1955 match at Wembley. England won 7-2. It was Stanley Matthews' day. He laid on all 7. Dennis Wilshaw got 4 of them, Don Revie 1, and Nat got the other 2. The Scotland left back that day was Harry Haddock. Stanley ran him ragged, but all credit to Harry, he never resorted to foul play, not like the Spaniards in Madrid. Before playing at Hampden Park, the team would meet at either Largs or Troon on the Wednesday. Tom Finney and Nat would travel up together. In those matches it was always hard. Nat was up against men like Big George Young, Willie Woodburn, Willie Cunningham and the rest. Hard men. The players always shook hands after the game, and the Scots would come into the dressing room. Big George Young would say, "Come on, Lofty, get your coat on, we're going for a pint." They played their best, done their job, and now the fun could begin. There was always a banquet in the evening, a really good night out. 3-2-2-3 formation. The WM changed the world of football. Nat thought his international career was over after the 1-1 draw with Scotland in 1956. He made a substitute appearance for Tommy Taylor against Finland in Helsinki that summer. He scored a couple of goals too, but by this time Tommy Taylor had more or less made the position his own. Munich changed all that. Nat said we lost the best centre forward of them all. In the autumn of 1958, Nat found himself back in the side, but he said farewell to Wembley on October 22nd, 1958. England beat the Soviet Union 5-0, with Nat scoring one. He stayed in the side for the next match against Wales at Villa Park on November 26th, a 2-2 draw, Nat's final match for England. Nat had a good run, 33 games, 30 goals. He scored 2 goals in a match 12 times. Nat never met anyone who was actually glad not to be in the England side, but he was totally honest when he said there was one day when he was relieved to miss an England game. The date, November 25th, 1953, the opposition, Hungary, who beat England 6-3. The first continental team to win on English soil. The performance of Ferenc Puskas, Nando Hideguti, Sandor Kocsis, Joseph Bozic, Zoltan Sebor, Laszlo Budai and the rest sent shockwaves through the English game, and what's more, they rubbed it in the following spring when they beat England 7-1 in Budapest. Nat didn't play in that game either. Management man. To the day he died, Nat didn't know why Bolton Wanderers wanted him to be their manager. He said, "Whatever persuaded me to take the job, I must go down as just about the worst manager in the world. I say that in all honesty, the job wasn't for me. I've been associated with Bolton Wanderers for 50 years. 48 of them have been happy. The other 2 I was manager, taking over from Bill Liddy in August 1968, and I was the man to rebuild a side which had slid into Division 2. He didn't mind the hard work. A manager has to be out looking for players. Often there's only Thursday and Sunday night at home. Everyone knew Nat at Burnham Park, but not as boss. It was hard for the players to accept him. It was time for rebuilding. He brought in players like Charlie Hurley, John Manning and the England World Cup winner Roger Hunt from Liverpool. Nat was looking for them to blend in with the youngsters. The directors were looking for Nat to bring back the glory days, but it didn't work out. In November 1970, the directors moved Nat upstairs as general manager. He was happy with that. So what is the secret? What have the great managers got that separates them from the majority? The kneeling men. It's a gift. Just like scoring goals was a gift for Jimmy Greaves. Manchester United's Matt Busby was the outstanding manager of the 1950s, along with Stan Cullis. They had charisma. Thrown a lifeline. Nat never thought the day would dawn when he and Bolton Wanderers would part company. When the axe came, it hit him like a sledgehammer. He was chief scout at the time. On June 8, 1972, he was called into the boardroom. The chairman, Jack Banks, was there with other directors. He was in tears. A big strong man, a builder, Jack was crying when he told Nat that the club had decided not to keep him on as chief scout. Nat was hurt as it came out of the blue, and he never found out why. opportunities for him away from Burnham Park. He did a bit of public relations work for a local supermarket chain. He never missed a game. Sometimes he sat in the stand, sometimes he stood in the paddock. And then the phone rang. It was Derek Morgan, a director at Burnham Park. Wouldn't I call in and have a chat? They were looking for someone to run their new executive club, a place for members to go and eat before matches and have a drink or meal afterwards. They needed a front man. Nat didn't think twice. This was a way of raising money and helping the club. The man behind the scheme was Alf Davis, the commercial manager at Burnham Park, and in Nat's view, the best commercial man in the business. He went to Headingley to become the chief executive of the Rugby League and Test cricket grounds. In the executive club there were 120 members who paid £300 a year for membership, a meal before the game, and the seat at the stand was full use of the club's facilities. Club President. In October 1986, Nat Lofthouse was made President of Bolton Wanderers. It was a great honour for Nat, who said, "I see the job as much more than a title at the top of the club's letterheadings. I'm still working flat out for Wanderers in any capacity. The football club has to pull together as a team, from the president and chairman right down to the lad who puts the corner flags out before a match. These days Wanderers have a hard core of around £5,000. Nat played for them in the First Division. In the years since he retired, he saw them slide down to the Fourth Division. Wanderers looked all set for a Wembley showdown in the Sherpa Van Trophy in the 1988-89 season. They met their old rivals Blackburn in the Northern Section final, while Wolves took on Torquay in the Southern Section. Stan Mortensen and Nat Lofthouse led out the teams for the second leg of the match with Blackburn at Bloomfield Road. It was just like old times for both games, big crowds and exciting games. Wanderers won the first leg 1-0 and scraped through 2-1 on aggregate, so it was the men of Devon, Torquay, who were the opponents at Wembley. Don't try and tell the fans of both clubs that the Sherpa Van Trophy is a waste of time. The fans, 46,513, travelled to Wembley to cheer on their teams, and it was a dream for club president Nathaniel Lofthouse to see Wanderers succeed 4-1. Referee booked Lofty. Nat was booked once in his career, once in over 700 games for club and country. He still sees that booking as a black mark on his career. When he ran onto the through pass, he thought another goal was to be chalked up. But when the whistle blew for offside, Nat picked up the ball and threw it at the linesman. He regretted it immediately. Nat said, "The referee was right to book me." Funnily enough, the story has a sequel. At the end of that season, the Lofthouse family took a family holiday in Bournemouth. Nat was on the beach at Branksome Chine with the kids when a little lad came up and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Lofthouse, may I have your autograph, please?" Nat replied, "How did you know who I was?" The little lad said, "Oh, my dad told me." Just then the father of the boy strolled over and said, "You don't remember me, do you, Nat? I was the linesman you threw the ball at that day you were booked at Burnham Park." Talk about being brought down to earth with a book. Nat's only booking, but generally bookings were few and far between in his day. There were no red or yellow cards and there weren't as many bookings. Why? First of all, the referee saw a booking as a last resort. Reluctant to bring the book out, preferring to have a quiet word with the offenders during the run of play. Better to say, "Right, Nat, I saw that, any more and you're in trouble." It's down to fair play. If you know you touched the ball last, you don't appeal for a throw-in. If you know the ball was a foot out of play, you don't argue when the linesman gives a throw-in. Too many players these days try to con the referee. How often do you see a player go down as if he's been hit by a double-decker bus? Roll around in agony. 30 seconds later, he's running around like a spring chicken. The House of Lords. Where did the hooligans come from? In Nat's day there was never any trouble. You rarely saw a policeman inside the ground. There was very little bad language. If someone started swearing, you could guarantee people nearby would call out, "Hey, do you mind? There are women and kids over here." The swearing would stop. Now you get a whole cock chanting and swearing together. Where have we gone wrong? It's a symptom of the society we live in.